The Fed chairman also answered more questions about the administration's plan to prop up Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac by giving the two mortgage finance giants an even greater government backstop. He told members of the House Financial Services Committee that restoring confidence to the companies is critical to the mortgage markets and thus the overall economy. Now, for more on Ben Bernanke's testimony and the plan to aid Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, we turn to two members of that committee, North Carolina Democrat Mel Watt, Texas Republican Jeb Hensarling. Thanks to both of you for joining us here on Money and Politics. Congressman Watt, the picture Ben Bernanke paints of the U.S. economy right now isn't very bright. Are you troubled by what you heard today from the chairman?
Well, I think we've been troubled for a good while. The question is, how can we turn it around? And I think both the committee and the administration have been making a concerted effort to do just that.
And Congressman Hensarling, how about your assessment of the economy right now? Before we get into the Fannie and Freddie situation, are you troubled by what you heard from Ben Bernanke?
Well, I certainly wasn't surprised, but yes, we're troubled. I mean, there are hardworking American families who are struggling, making decisions every day. Do I buy a gallon of milk? Do I buy a gallon of gas? I mean, gas prices, as we know, have increased 75% almost in 18 months. We would hope that the Democrat majority would bring bills to the floor to produce American energy in America. Supply and demand, we cannot repeal those laws. We need more supply in America. That would help.
All right, and Congressman Hensarling, are you satisfied with Ben Bernanke's handling of this situation? Is it Congress's job, the administration's job to respond? Do you expect the Fed to do more?
Well, I think the Fed is probably about at the limit on what they can do in some respects, because by cheapening the dollar and by continuing to lower interest rates, what they've done is lead to this inflationary spiral that at least is partly responsible for the huge run-up we've seen in food and fuel prices. And I'm also very concerned that all of a sudden they are becoming the lender and guarantor of last resort for every business enterprise in America. And as bad as the situation is today, they could be making it worse if they're telling people that you can privatize your profits, but you can socialize your losses and pass them on to the taxpayers. Nobody wants to see Fannie or Freddie fail. We have to be very, very careful that we don't set a precedent that could bring about even a larger economic calamity than we're facing today.
Congressman Watt, it sounds like Congressman Hensarling, we heard some of this in the hearing today, has some reservations about the Treasury Secretary's plan for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac propping them up. Do you have reservations as well?
Well, I hope that the fact that they are propping them up will mean that the actual acts won't have to happen. I think to some extent what the Fed is doing is responding to the market, and the market has lost confidence and continues to demand more and more and more reinforcement. And to some extent, based on everything I've seen, this is a psychological reaction that the market is having, not a real financial reaction. I'm not sure that Fannie and Freddie ever will have to use this access to the window.
And Congressman Hensarling, let me get you to expand on your reservations. Are you and other Republicans prepared at this point to actually try and stand in the way of this proposal from the Treasury Secretary?
Well, one, it's a little hard to know exactly, in some respects, what the proposal is because it continues to change. But if there is absolutely no ceiling on the taxpayer liability, yes, I stand prepared to oppose it. Listen, again, nobody wants to see Fannie and Freddie fail. Today, they are too big to fail, but we have to ensure that tomorrow they're not. In other words, we need reforms to assure that we never face this situation again. And oh, by the way, apparently, Fannie and Freddie, to the best of our knowledge, didn't even request this assistance. They say they are in good financial shape. Their regulator says they're in good financial shape. So why should the federal taxpayer, who again is struggling to fill up their pickup truck, pay their mortgage, have to see the national debt go from $9.5 trillion to potentially increasing that by 50%, adding a potential $5 trillion of debt if we're going to cover all of Fannie and Freddie's debt? That doesn't make any sense. If they're financially secure, they shouldn't need that kind of taxpayer liability exposure.
Congressman Watt, Congressman Hensarling is painting the very dire scenario there, perhaps the worst case scenario. Again, from your vantage point, it's your hope and assessment that maybe these two firms won't need any of this help. But the reality is you're basically, Congress, some at least argued in the Senate, might be writing a blank check here.
Well, I think that I would be concerned about too, but for somebody who believes so vigorously in the market, the government here is responding to the market. My colleague here is absolutely right that neither Fannie nor Freddie requested this assistance. It's the market that's demanding this this kind of response. And if Fannie and Freddie are correct, it will never be used. So I think this is to turn around the psychology of the market as much as anything else, rather than be a specific dedicated backstop for Fannie and Freddie.
All right, listen, I'm going to have to leave our discussion right there. We thank both of you for joining us. Mel Watt, a Democrat from North Carolina, Jeb Hensarling, Republican from Texas. Thanks for joining us here on Bloomberg.